Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our weekly Q&A from the St. Louis ARC Family Support Team. I'm Sharon Spurlock, the Senior Director of Family Education, and I'm really excited for today's webinar. Today, we have with us several people that have come together to help us show a movie for you, a movie premiere in the St. Louis area that's happening on September 3rd, and that movie is The Ride Ahead. We hope we'll see you on September 3rd at 6 p.m. and the Millennium Center at UMSL to watch the film The Ride Ahead. So it's time to meet our guest today, and we have some wonderful folks that have come together to share information about this movie. I'm going to start on my left with April. April, tell everybody about yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me, Sharon. My name is April Register. I'm an associate professor and department chair at the University of Missouri St. Louis. And I am super excited to be co-hosting along with St. Louis ARC, the UMSL College of Education and the UMSL Office of Inclusive Postsecondary Education and UMSL Social Peers on hosting the event in the film screening on September 3rd. So really excited to be here for this conversation.
Thank you. So nice to see you, April. And Jane St. John, we haven't seen you in a while. Hello.
Hi, I'm Jane St. John. I'm with the Life Course Nexus at the Institute for Human Development, which is a part of the University of Missouri, Kansas City. So I'm very excited to be here and talk about the work we've done with Dan to create a companion tool for the film.
Thank you, Jane. And that's our lead in to Dan Habib. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you, Sharon. Thanks, April. Thanks, Jane, for all coming together for this. I'm Dan Habib. My pronouns are he, him, and I am the Inclusive Communities Project Director at the Westchester Institute for Human Development, which is also a UCED, the University Center on Excellence in Disability out of Westchester, New York. I live in New Hampshire, but today I'm in Woodstock, New York on vacation. So I'm all over the place. But I'm also the co-director with my son Samuel, who we're going to meet virtually in just a bit, of the film The Ride Ahead. And I've been doing documentary film work for about 20 years now, all focused on disability issues, and was really thrilled to work with Jane and her team and on the tool we're going to be sharing today, the Light Vision tool, and with Sharon and April on this event that's coming up. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And as Dan mentioned, the co-producer and star of this movie, Samuel, couldn't be with us today. So we do have an introduction to share from him.
Hi, everyone. My name is Samuel Habib. My pronouns are he and him. I am a white male with brown hair and a beard. I am wearing a dark gray shirt. I am the co-director of The Ride Ahead. I work part-time at the Westchester Institute for Human Development and like Right Now Films. Thanks for coming to this screening. Before you watch The Ride Ahead, I'd like to give you a bit of background. I've lived in Concord, New Hampshire my whole life, and the schools are very inclusive for students with disabilities. I was in general education classes all the way through school, and I had a lot of friends and was part of clubs and sports. But things felt confusing after I graduated. I wanted to go to college, date, get a job, live on my own. But no one tells you how to be an adult, let alone an adult with a disability. I suggested an idea to my dad, who is a filmmaker. How about I interview badass adults with disabilities about their transition to adulthood? I decided to start by interviewing people I already knew, like Judy Heumann, Bob Williams, and Keith Jones, because they are people I look up to. They are great advocates and role models for kids and young adults with disabilities. I wanted to ask them and other people I admired about their transition to adulthood to help me and others be successful. These are people I wanted to have as mentors. We wanted to focus on people who would be honest and tell it like it is. We created this documentary and our impact campaign so that young adults with disabilities will feel more seen and heard, and find their own mentors. As someone who struggles to communicate, this film is incredibly meaningful to me because it is making my experience visible and it is getting my voice, and others' voices, heard. I can't wait to see how it changes the landscape. I think it's going to help improve the world for disabled people. I learned from my mentors that it's not easy to be an adult with a disability. Connecting with the disability community has helped me feel much more confident in myself. Okay, hope you enjoy the film.
All right, that's a perfect lead into Dan. Samuel's so wonderful in being able to explain his motivations for the film. Can you tell us all a little bit I know you're going to show us the trailer and then maybe tell us about how this film came to be.
Sure. Let me show the trailer because I think that captures a lot of the essence of the film and the content. And then I'm very excited to tell you a little more about the film itself. Just a little bit of a teaser today before they get the full experience soon. So this is the trailer for The Ride Ahead.
What's up? I'm Samuel Habib. Growing up, my life was pretty awesome. Now, I'm ready to date, move out, and go to college, but it's freaking complicated. One minute I can be getting dressed for the day, and the next minute I'm racing to the ER. People talk down to me.
You are such a cutie.
Kind of talking to him like it's a 5-year-old.
The disability is not define who you are.
I can't believe he stroked my face. Weird. I need to talk to more disabled people who have navigated this stuff and are living badass adult lives. What is the biggest risk you've taken in your life?
Biggest risk I've taken in my life.
The biggest risk?
Do you feel underestimated because of the way you talk?
Never. I ignore anyone who refuses to accept me.
You have to have ninja patience. If you have a disability, sometimes my patience runs out.
Me too.
Do you have advice for me about sex?
Yes, I do.
If someone doesn't want to date you because you're disabled, that's not the person that you ever want to date. Ever.
One can be sexual without necessarily screwing. And I'm glad my mother's not hearing this discussion.
I don't mind having a disability. I just wish the world was wheelchair accessible.
Hell yes.
I love who I am when I do not love the impression created on my disability.
The work of achieving social justice for disabled people also means changing societal and cultural values.
What we've been discussing, Samuel, is allowing disabled people to feel proud about who we are. We have a right not to be discriminated against.
I'm tired of being underestimated. I want to find my way.
So The Ride Ahead just aired nationally on PBS this summer, and we're really excited to bring it to different communities like in Missouri, around the country, because we want the film to be used really to facilitate other people's journey into adulthood, other disabled young adults' journey into adulthood. And Samuel, as he said in his intro, in school, he had a very inclusive experience. He was included right from preschool through high school, and we as a family believe strongly in inclusive education. It's really the work we've been doing for a lot of years on that front. And we know as a country that does yield the best outcomes for young adults with disabilities, to be included in regular education, to have access to their community, to employment, to effective transition to adult healthcare, to housing, all these things. But how do you do that? How do you get there? How do you build a social life, an academic life, a work life, a life in the community once you leave this built-in community of school? And that was Samuel's quest with this film, was to try and figure out how am I going to make this transition successfully? And he felt that the best way to figure that out was to reach out to mentors, to find adults with disability around the country who have been there, done that, and have had the ups and downs and the fits and starts with all those transitions. So we started thinking about this film back in 2019, and in early 2020, we were able to line up interviews with Bob Williams and Judy Heumann in February of 2020. So we kind of all know what happened in March of 2020. Everything shut down. So during that time, we started doing virtual interviews with people like Maysoon Zaid and Ali Stroker and Keith Jones, but always wanted to get back into the real life interactions. That's Samuel's passion, is traveling, meeting people in person. So over the course of the next 3 years, we did get vaccinated. We were able to get out into the road again and he interviewed these folks all around the country while we continued to document his transition into adulthood, both through my camera work, but primarily through his own camera work with 2 cameras mounted to his wheelchair. So his own perspective. And we decided early on that not only would all of his mentors, of course, be disabled, and he, as the star of the film, was disabled, but the majority of our production and outreach team would be people with disabilities. And we stayed true to that pledge. So the majority of the team are disabled as well. And when we started thinking about how to make sure the film could be used out there in the country for in schools and communities and colleges, we reached out to University of Missouri, Kansas City, and Jane and Shelley and their team. And I had worked with Shelley Reynolds for a long time, for years, on the Presidential Committee for People with Intellectual Disabilities under Obama, and knew about the great work for Life Course Nexus, and thought, boy, wouldn't it be great if we could create like a blended tool between the Ride Ahead and Life Course. So I think, if it's okay, Sharon, if this is a good time, maybe I can hand off to Jane a little bit to talk about Life Course and give people a sense of the framework that we built on.
Yeah, so I usually do this with slides, but I can do it in my sleep. But Life Course really is built on several key principles. One of those being is that we think about all people and access for all people to all aspects of life. So that's one thing to start with. The other thing is thinking about a person and considering a person in the context of not only themselves, but their family and their community, which, again, when you see the film, you'll see that, that theme emanating through, Samuel, his family, his community. The other thing is having a vision and having a trajectory for the way that you want your life to go. And even just from the trailer that you saw, you can see that Samuel very much has a vision for what he wants. He knows the vision, now figuring out the path to get there. So I think that's very powerful to think about. I'll get to domains in a minute. I'm going to skip that on purpose, but we talk in Life Course about the 3 buckets of support, and the 3 buckets of support are basically information. When you need information, when you need to figure out how to navigate things, and again, the film speaks to me on this so much, with Samuel trying to figure out how to navigate adulthood, right? The second bucket is about, connections and peer support and, all of the things that happen in the film where Samuel connects with all of the different mentors and people that he looks up to. So it really focuses on that second bucket, I think, more than anything. And then finally, the third bucket is about goods and services. And again, during the film, you'll also see that, some of the things that Samuel needs to be able to be successful and to have the life that he wants and to be able to move towards his vision. The star, of course, we know is talking about everything from your own strengths and assets, which Samuel has in great quantities. Relationships, and again, Samuel using his relationships to really think about what it was he needed to be able to navigate adulthood. And then we think about technology, and so technology is key, especially to someone like Samuel, who may not communicate in a traditional manner and uses, lots of different types of equipment to be able to function throughout his day. The community, all the different things in the community that anyone else can enjoy and access because they're members of that community. And then finally, eligibility supports, which are the things we're eligible for many different reasons. And again, you'll see all of those things kind of come into play, I think, in the film. The thing that really spoke to me probably the most, and as we worked with Dan and Samuel, we kind of started in the Life Course way, in the Shelley way, for those of you that know Shelley, of, yeah, let's do something with Dan. Let's talk about it and let's figure out what it is. We had no idea what it was going to look like when we started working with Dan. And I don't remember what year we started working together, but it was fairly early in the film. You guys had some clips and different things like that, but you really hadn't started putting together the whole thing. And we were just so lucky to be able to watch the film come to life. We got to see it in different versions and, before a lot of the editing was done. And as I watched it, I just started thinking the life domains. Everything he's talking about in here is the life domains, starting with daily life and employment, wanting to go back or wanting to continue his schooling, thinking about what kind of a job he's going to have, moving to community living, wanting to live on his own, figuring out how he can accomplish that with help from his family, moving into social and spirituality, which encompasses so much of what he talks about, and having friends and having relationships and having a girlfriend and on all of those different things. Thinking about safety and security, because that's always a concern for everybody, but especially when you have, the kind of needs that Samuel has and some different, medical issues and things like that. So figuring out how to have the life he wants while staying safe and being secure, which moves us into healthy living, right? Healthy living, we think about how are we staying healthy? How are we having the life that we want? Not just physically healthy, but mentally healthy, thinking long-term down the road. Advocacy and engagement, that's a given with Samuel, right? That's what he does. As I watched the film and as it was developing, I'm just like, it has to be something based on those life domains, and we just kind of took it from there.
Can you, one of you show us the toolkit that was eventually developed? We will be sharing that
Sure.
at the screening and having some discussion groups following that.
Sure, I can do that. So if you go to the chat that I just put, the link I just put in the chat, which is to the rideaheadfilm.com/resources, we have all of our resources here, which include a discussion guide for the film, the Life Vision tool, how to host a watch party with the film, and some screening publicity materials. But if we click through here to the Life Vision tool, as Jane was saying, I think really eloquently, we realized how much overlap there was between the film and the life course, structure and domains. So the first page is just basically an overview about this is a tool that can be used to do life planning. And Samuel has done life planning with a variety of tools his whole life. So there was a lot, this came really naturally to us to think about how do you create a tool, a resource where you can think about your hopes, your dreams, your goals, and how to achieve them, how to get there, or at least move towards them, right? We don't achieve all of our goals in life, and that's okay. Like sometimes just setting the goals is the most important thing, and working with the resources and the people in your life that you want to build them. So Jane, we can go back and forth here a little bit, but I'll just say that what we did was we took little bits from the films. In some cases, there are clips, like if you click through here, you'll go to a YouTube clip from the film. Sometimes we just use examples from the film, like Samuel's, you'll see a scene in the film where Samuel does interviews with congressional candidates and senatorial candidates in New Hampshire about disability issues. So he uses advocacy interest to actually work and get a paid job doing these interviews. And we talked about his individual and family life, the fact that he wants to spend a lot of time with his friends and his brother. That's a big goal for him. So those all fell under the daily life and employment area. And then, so you have those examples here on the left, and then you have the guiding question that we offer for people. So for example, in education, it's how can I make post-secondary education accessible to me? Or for employment in a meaningful day, the guiding question for anybody is how can I use my strengths towards a job or a career? And then if people want to, I think it's probably, Jane, optional. They can prioritize it, in terms of how important it is. And then as you go through the tool, you can just go bit by bit and look at the community living area. And again, continue to find these examples, either through examples that are described in the film or through video clips from the film, or in some cases, quotes from the film to trigger those planning. So this tool could really be used, honestly, even without seeing the film, but we think it's greatly enriched by people seeing the film and then using the tool. So we've tried really hard to make the film really very accessible to schools all over the country. We've done a community screening campaign. PBS has a platform where people can register for their community network, and schools can actually get access to the film through the PBS community network. So we're big fans of public television, and we really believe that they have a mission to make media available to everybody. So Jane, is there anything else you want to say about the tool that I didn't cover?
Oh, a couple of things. Addressing the priority. The reason we did that is because sometimes, especially with a tool this large, it can be really overwhelming to people that are trying to plan and think about life. And so we want people to feel free to just pick the domains and the subdomains that make sense for them, and then give them a way to say, the most important thing I want to work on right now is this one, and prioritize that as a number one or an A or whatever, however they want to do that. But it kind of helps them to I call it, eating the elephant, one bite at a time, right? You can't necessarily eat that whole elephant, but if you just take a few bites at a time, I'm the type that would fill out the whole thing just because, but that's just the way I am. But some people are like, that's too much. So that's why we kind of did the priority. The other thing is, and Sharon, I'm sure you probably noticed this, that we have a life domain tool that's very different. It's similar, but very different. This one's actually way cooler than our original life domain tool. But we were able to include our subdomains. So each domain has 3 different subdomains underneath of it. So for example, we're showing right now social and spirituality. You can think about personal relationships. You can think about what you do in your leisure time, what you do for recreation, and you can think about spiritual enrichment if that's something that you enjoy or want to pursue. And so for each domain, there are 3 different subdomains. And so that's why it's a lot longer tool than if you're familiar with Life Course, you might have been familiar with or expected. So, but I think it really allowed us to dig in. And for someone who's transitioning into adulthood or trying to figure out adult life, I think it makes a lot of sense to have those subdomains broken down to some very specific areas that they can look at and see if that's part of their vision.
Excellent. I really enjoy that tool in particular. And I think about how many movies that you could probably use a similar format. Young people like video, they like media. So it also feels like a natural catch to really draw people in who might be tired of school, or, a documentary might sound too educational, but this makes it feel really fun and engaging. And I really like that. I have a couple questions in the chat. I want to go ahead and ask Dan while you're here. And I don't even know if you can answer this one. Our first question was, how long did it take to film everything for this documentary? And with a COVID gap, that's probably a challenging question.
Yeah, no, it was about 3 years of filming and about 1.5 years of editing. And I would say it was unusual for a couple of reasons. One was, yes, COVID made everyone's life unusual for a long time. So that was certainly a big factor. But also because Samuel and I were determined from the beginning to go at his pace and to make sure we created lots of space for him to communicate in his own way. In the trailer, you just see a lot of quick scenes and his dialogue, but you'll see in the full film, it takes Samuel a lot of time to speak out his truth and his feelings and thoughts. And it's very laborious for him to speak, but that's his preferred way of communicating. And he speaks, and it might take him an hour to say 3 sentences, and then we program them into his device, and then he has them readily available for interviews or for just interpersonal communication or for his college work or whatever it might be. So we never rushed things. We just took our time and made sure that we could move at that speed that it took for Samuel to have an authentically told story from his perspective. And we also traveled a fair amount for this, and that's a lot of work and a lot of time to travel. And so we had to space out those trips to New York and Washington, Indianapolis, and other places. So it's about 3 years and then 1.5 years of editing. And then some people may be familiar with the short film that we made called My Disability Roadmap. And what happened was we created something called a sizzle reel, which in film language is like a long teaser that you use to maybe get additional fundraising or to show people kind of what kind of work you're doing. We sent that to some filmmaker friends, and they said, boy, this really holds together as a short film. It's a very compelling short film just on its own. We sent that to the New York Times. They loved it, and they developed it into what they call an OpDoc. It's like a short film on their opinion pages. And that had a life of its own. It ended up winning an Emmy Award and just having this huge reach through the New York Times. It also helped us move on to the full film for fundraising, for production. It just helped a lot. So the film had a couple different stages along the way. And I would say it was about 4.5 years total from beginning it to release.
I think that's really empowering for people watching to think about the fact that it's okay. You should have permission to take as long as you need to get things done. And I think that's one of the things that really comes out in the film that's really cool. And I don't know if this was the first time that Samuel was involved in the production aspects in the film more than just being the center of the dialogue, but what did he like about the process of making a film? We have that question in the chat as well.
Yeah, and he has talked a lot about that, and I can channel him, I think, for this question. So he, as you alluded to, Sharon, Samuel was I would say, the subject of the film, including Samuel, which was done a long time ago. My first film that came out in 2008, and he was only 4 to 7 years old at that point. So he wasn't quite ready to be a co-director of a film at that age, at age 5. But but you'll see, if you haven't seen the film, he has a very strong personality and presence in that film as well. And this is the first time he had co-directed a film. He was a consultant on the film Mr. Connolly Has ALS, a film I did about his high school principal who developed ALS and lost the ability to speak and started using a wheelchair. So you had Samuel using a communication device in a wheelchair, communicating with his principal, who used a communication device in a wheelchair. It's a very powerful story. It's freely available on our website. I'll throw a link in the chat to that as well, that film. But in terms of this film, I mean, honestly, I was just talking with my friends that I'm here vacationing with about this, a couple of longtime guy friends who also have kids with disabilities. And, Samuel's real passion is traveling and meeting cool people, right? Doesn't that sound great for all of us, traveling and meeting cool people? The film, in some ways, was a vehicle for that. I mean, he loves the process of making a film, and he loves the impact that it has. And he's getting messages now from all over the country and all over the world about this film. But honestly, his favorite part is the adventure. It's traveling and meeting these people like Judy and Maysoon and Bob Williams and all the people in the film, Keith Jones, who we've known a long time, some of whom we've known a long time, some of whom we met for the first time when we did the interviews. So that was his favorite part, he would say. And just the humor, people will see there's a lot of humor in the film, and that's very important to us, to make a film fun and funny and enjoyable to watch, as well as challenging and provocative. I hope and think this film does both. That's what we hope. So I'll put the link to Mr. Connolly Has ALS in the chat. And I did notice there was a question about the tattoo also in the chat. Yes, Samuel has 3 tattoos, actually. One of them, I think, was visible in the trailer of the Boston Red Sox. And then he got one other tattoo that you can see happening in the film. And then he got a 3rd tattoo since the film was made. But that's nothing compared to his brother Isaiah, who has like 20, I think, at this point. So I'm just like, hey, they're adults. They're going to do what they're going to do. And Betsy and I have no control over that anymore.
That's part of the journey, isn't it? Is the family kind of stepping back and knowing that they can't control every decision anymore. And some of them aren't going to be great decisions, but some of them are going to be incredible. So, April, you've been so super patient. I want to make sure we get in and talk to you. The last part of this question that's in the chat is what's next for Samuel? So I'm just going to lead in and say I was very lucky to be able to interview Samuel and Dan for the film premiere that we're having. We've pre-recorded the Q&A, and he's going to answer that question about what he's doing next. So I'm not going to tell you because I want you to go to the movie. And April's going to tell you a little bit about the details about where you can go to see the film, how we are trying to make it an event that's really going to be fun and exciting for all. Jane.
That's right.
So we're really, really excited. So some important information to know for anybody who is on this webinar or watches the video of it later. It's free and it's open to the public. So this is not just meant to be for students at the University of Missouri St. Louis. However, we did coordinate this to be during what we refer to as our weeks of welcome. So this is the first week of classes at UMSL, and usually for about 2 weeks, we coordinate across the university on key events that we think are important for students to be able to have a sense of belonging and welcoming and to learn more about their community as new students at the university. So this is one of those key events, and we're super excited to actually run with the theme for the event. So besides just being able to watch the film and to actually hear directly from Dan and Samuel on their perspectives through a Q&A, we also are going to have temporary tattoos available in honor of Samuel. And we have a red carpet planned out with some popcorn, gourmet popcorn, that will be available for anybody who attends, all free of charge. And we wanted to be able to engage around the idea of what it feels to be welcome and what that looks like for different people. And so we do have some questions, some prompts for people in response to watching the film that will be on display throughout the university. after, where people can actually reply what they think. And we have lots of different questions specific to kind of, what sort of things do you feel you had in common with Samuel throughout the film? What are some challenges that you hadn't ever considered or thought of? What are ways in which you feel welcome, and how do we demonstrate that at a university? So just some really good questions for thought that various people, if they choose, they can respond to and put it up on a Post-it board that we're going to kind of wheel around and have in different places with the poster of the film in the middle, so that people can go on to any streaming services that they might have to be able to watch it later on PBS. So super excited and really want to have this be an opportunity for us to engage with our community as well. So anybody is welcome. It is at the university in the Century Rooms, which is in our Millennium Student Center. And I've checked if you use Waze or any Google Maps, you can put in the Millennium Student Center and find where we're at. We'll have signs and it should be pretty clear. 6 p.m. on September 3rd at UMSL.
And I just want to add to that you guys are super well connected to public transportation. So there's not one, but 2 Metrolink stops that stop there. And it's the north stop that you'd want to get off at for the Millennium Center, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
All right, fantastic. I don't see, except for one more question I do want to ask. Dan, we've got people that are fascinated about just the idea of filmmaking on here. So they were asking about just other filming conditions. You mentioned briefly all the travel, weather conditions. How did that impact your production crew? And I'm going to piggyback on that and just ask, do you think there's opportunities to reach out to the broader filmmaking community about being more inclusive in the behind the scenes team that you pull together for a movie in addition to your subject matter?
Yeah, two big questions. I mean, I did respond to the one in the Q&A, but I'll just say it again that it was both. We love the travel. I mean, traveling is really fun. It's really exciting. We love seeing new places, and it's very complicated logistically to travel with a power wheelchair, especially when you're flying. And not just the power wheelchair, but Samuel requires a lot of medical supplies, a lot of medicine. So we actually show in the film some scenes of the logistics of what it's like to travel, because we wanted to be transparent about that, and it's kind of part of the story and part of the experience of making the film. So I guess what I would say is we love the travel. We can't do it as often as we'd like, because it can also be very tiring and very challenging. And we had an incident that's captured in the film where Samuel's wheelchair was damaged, which unfortunately is extremely common in air travel. And it's a huge issue that we're working on at a national level as well, to try to do advocacy around that. So yes, we love to travel. We love to see new places. We travel a fair amount, but we pick our spots because it's very complicated and expensive too.
Yeah.
And then in terms of the filmmaking, I mean, we've been very vocal and very out there about the fact that people, when there are stories being told about a community, you might call it a marginalized community or a very specific community like the disability community, it's very important that people from that community are in leadership roles in the filmmaking process. Now, I am not a person with a disability, but I have a lot of sensitivity to it, given my parenthood of Samuel. But I also knew from the get-go that I needed to make sure that there were people in leadership positions that were disabled. And so our executive producer is Jim Lebrecht, who did Crip Camp, our social media manager, our co-producer, all of our musicians, our animators, all disabled people. Samuel, of course, as co-director, is disabled. I mean, the majority of the people were seeing the world and this filmmaking through a disabled lens. And that was extremely important to us. So we can't force any film team to do things a certain way, but we've seen this happen with other teams, where there are films made about the Black community, where they are making sure there are people who are in the leadership roles who are Black, or in the LGBTQ community, whatever it might be. And I continue to be very vocal about that stories should be told as much as possible by their own community about these different groups and identities.
Thank you so much. And I'm really grateful to you for making the film and giving us the opportunity to share it with our community. I've got one more question for each Jane and April before we wrap up. Jane, I'm going to use some life course language with you. I want to know what kind of an aha moment you had, either watching the film or making the document that accompanies it.
Wow. Okay. That's a heavy question. I do want to say, that the partnership with Dan and Samuel and the crew that Dan works with was amazing, because once we realized the direction we wanted to go with the life domains, and just coming up with the clips and the verbiage for writing out the different prompts and the descriptions was all very much back and forth. We collaborated a lot. We had a lot of meetings. Like I said, we sent things back and forth with each other. And so just being able to work on that project like that with people who are so creative and so amazing was just awesome. Gosh, all the ahas of the film. It's like every time I've watched the film, I can't even tell you how many times now, but every time I see it, something else jumps out at me and just blows me away. I think, one of the favorite things I saw in the film was the relationship that Samuel has with his brother. You talked about Samuel being an adventurer. I saw that very much in his brother as well. They adventure in slightly different ways, but sometimes the same way. But it really just showed, I think, for me, the need for, like you said earlier, I think, Sharon, to be able to engage with individuals in that age group who they look at life differently than us old people that didn't have computers and all the different multimedia and all the different things like that. And it was so exciting to see how the multimedia came together, with the clips and the different things from the film. And so I hope I can use that in my work, moving forward. So that was a big aha for me as well.
Yeah, that's really cool. I do think that's such a great type of outreach. So April, before we wrap up, I just want to know, kind of, when we talked about showing this film, what are the outcomes you'd like to see for your students, both within the Office for Inclusive Post-Secondary Education and for the general population that comes to see this?
So I think for them, everybody involved, everyone that you just mentioned, for them to have an aha moment in watching film. I'm a big fan of art and film as a way to share stories and for critical thinking. And I think it is a beautiful film for that process. I think there's so much that people can relate to, and then so much information that might be new to people, or things that they hadn't considered. And so that dichotomy of both is kind of the perfect combination to walk away from an experience like taking the time to watch, a film. So I definitely am hopeful. We're also really fortunate that at UMSL, for students who are receiving services from the Office of Inclusive Post-Secondary Education, are very familiar with the life course tools. And we are using it in multiple ways, using those tools in multiple ways to support students entering into our program, who are here throughout their time in the program and then exiting out. And so I think it's one thing to talk about those tools around yourself, but then to see some kind of concrete examples of how they might be discussed or facilitated in terms of watching a film like The Ride Ahead. And that combination is just a beautiful way for our students to even get the most out of those resources available to them in planning their own futures. So I'm really excited. And then lastly, any time that we can elevate powerful stories and make it a part of our community as the norm within the university is fabulous. And so it sounds like it's an easy thing, but to get us into the weeks of welcome slot as one of the highlighted activities to ensure that we're doing it at a time that it wasn't competing with other kinds of key events, and to know that the university is highlighting this story and these opportunities as not only a way of representation for the many students with disabilities that we have on campus, but as a way to learn more about other people's experiences and do better in terms of accessibility and helping people meet their own goals that they have for themselves. So I that's a lofty answer, but that would be fantastic for all of the people who attend to walk away with those kinds of thoughts and experiences.
Wow, that was a really good off-the-cuff answer. I can tell you're a professor. You are gifted in your communication. I was going to wrap it up there, but we do have a couple quick other comments and questions. I'd love to see that somebody said, "I'd love to hear Sam talk more about dating once the film is out longer." I imagine he'll have a lot of single ladies reaching out. So there you go. And then they're wondering if there's a way to buy the film for themselves after it's done being screened.
Sure, I can answer that. So the film is freely available through September 19th on PBS. So that should not discourage anybody from coming to the event, because it's going to be much better to see it on the big screen with all the context and discussion. But certainly you'll want to share news of that it's available. So if you go to our website, rideaheadfilm.com, you can get information about seeing it there. There's also a store on our website where people can buy the film for educational purposes at this point, to show it in their schools or communities. And then we are going to release it in the future, probably late September and October, on Apple TV, Amazon, Google Play, Canopy, all those platforms. So it'll be very widely available in this fall. Yeah.
Very exciting. Thank you guys so much for being here today. This is, I'm so excited about this film. It's a 2-hour event. So if you come and settle in on campus at UMSL and get your popcorn and take your red carpet selfie and get your tattoo, the movie's going to start at 6, and we'll follow up with a Q&A with Samuel and Dan, and you'll be ready to go home sometime after 8. So it's a full-length movie. So come prepared to settle in and enjoy it.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Good to see everybody.